This is the Team Objection podcast for August 27th, 2020, episode 450. It's a multiple of 50, but we're not doing anything fancy. We're saving all that stuff for the 500th episode, which, in theory, will be happening around this time next year.
Mm-hmm. When the world has returned to normal.
Oh, Dave.
Normal.
That's never going to happen.
I'm crossing my fingers.
Mm-hmm. So this week we're going to do something that we've been promising for, I think, 3 months. Or at least sort of alluding to.
That's why I was pumping my fists.
Mm-hmm.
Because, Dave, there's a meteor that's going to land before the election. I'm sure you've heard of this. What you haven't heard is there's going to be an alien virus on the meteor. And that's just going to be a whole new thing.
So it's pretty much status quo.
Kind
yeah,
of.
I guess in a way. The aliens are like, ha ha, and we're like, bitch, we've been here before.
Old news, man.
Yeah, get in the line.
I haven't really wanted to tempt this particular fate, but in my head I've been like, what else could happen this year?
Yeah, pretty much.
And other than like a massive economic crash, I'm not entirely sure what else that would be. And people were like, what about Trump winning? And I'm like, look, I'm used to that.
Yeah, and the economic crash is going to happen when Biden wins, duh.
Yeah, that's always the threat from the Republicans, and it doesn't exactly bear fruit all that often.
I would like Trump to not win again, but I am kind of like, well, at least we've seen probably, hopefully, the worst of that. There was no nuclear war or like anything crazy.
Yet.
Yeah, but like it's been a term.
Give it time.
If Trump like backloaded all of his plans for world destruction, then I guess it was awfully ballsy to count on getting elected again.
Remember, he joked, I'm using extreme air quotes here, this week about 12 more years, so there might actually be plenty of time to get to all sorts of other nightmares that haven't happened yet.
I forgot about that.
He joked, which is terminology that basically just means he wasn't serious unless he was. Giving that out just in case, just putting it out there. Of course he didn't mean 12 more years unless people really supported that, in which case he would absolutely do it.
Luckily, it won't matter in a few months now because he will be voted out. In the meantime, we finally got to my homework.
Yeah.
This was not the topic. Presidential debate and topic
No.
was not our topic.
We will have it as a topic, but it is
We
not.
will.
I am not going to push my goddamn homework another week. We are getting to this thing.
Yeah, and we can talk about the election the week before Super Tuesday, or not Super Tuesday, Election Day. We can do that then, a few days in advance. Put our predictions out there, and like our other predictions probably look stupid afterwards, but that's the point of predictions.
Our
so we'll
predictions 4 years ago were spot on if anyone goes back and listens to that.
Yeah, well, 90% of predictions all fucked up, so I don't feel too bad.
Yep.
Shaun's been alluding to homework for a while now, and It was primarily to get Dave invested. He wanted to make sure Dave had enough time to prep, because we know, going back to the early days of this show, that sometimes if Dave gets caught off guard, he wants to go into his shell, and then Shaun tries to pull him out of the shell, and Dave doesn't want any part of that, so he comes out kicking and screaming, and it turns into a whole 30-minute bit. And we thought, why not just skip that 30-minute bit and just go right to the content? So, Shaun, the floor is yours. It's your segment. I'm not doing
shit. It doesn't
shit.
matter anyway.
Well, we'll get to that.
Because, Dave, I gave him weeks. So, I gave a few different homework assignments.
And I've got all of them except the one that you decided to do today.
You never know which quiz the teacher's going to pop on you.
True.
That's
True.
You have to be careful.
So, there's a few different ones. The best you've ever been at a game, the most annoying thing in a game, the worst good game you've ever played. These are all things that will come down the road, among others. Along with that Final Fantasy VI retrospective that I still like am really going to do. It's going to be like our Duke Nukem Forever, We're just going to keep talking about it. Hopefully it'll be better quality, though. The one that I wanted to do this week is side quest focused. I think it's a thing that goes overlooked in a lot of games, and it really shouldn't, because it's a huge component of most games, and a lot of times developers use it as a means to like pad out their game time. But the ones most of the time making a good game know to actually take those seriously. They're an opportunity to explore more areas of the world, or to invest more deeply in the game, or try out something that's not part of the main quest. So if done right, they can make or break a game experience. And I thought it'd be fun to go through those experiences. The lists that I have are, what is the best side quest that you've ever done? Actually, we're going to start there. Just give me some. You can do top 3. That's fine. Best side quest ever. The ones that really stick out to you is like, that changed my life.
Well, I have one that I'm prepared. I have one off the top of my head that I didn't really realize was a side quest until I kind of looked into things, but one that meant the most. And if you want me to go first, I'll go first.
Floor's yours.
Good. It is getting Magus in Chrono Trigger.
Oh,
because
I suppose that's a side quest.
You don't have to do that. You can kill him. You can. It's just not something you necessarily have to do in getting that. And the idea of the bad guy joining your party wasn't really fleshed out back then. So I think it's a super cool like side quest of the sense of how the game changes in completing that part of the game.
You can argue that Frog's story is better if you don't let Magus join, but I never did that. I've seen what happens.
Yeah.
Like I've watched, the endings and how they've changed and stuff just to see Frog's story in it. But of all the times I've played Chrono Trigger, I've never not taken Magus because I like him, even though he doesn't generally end up on my final party. And I think that's because he doesn't have any triple tech or dual techs. I think he has triple techs. He doesn't have any dual techs.
One triple tech, yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, that's an interesting one because the one I was going to nominate first was from that same game, but it's not that.
I figured you would.
Is it saving Chrono?
It's reviving Chrono.
Yeah.
Also not required. Even more so because you're not even required to confront whether or not you're bringing him back. You can just go onto that bucket or take the epoch to the end of time or whatever and fight Lavos without even having considered the possibility of bringing him back. Because with Magus, you have to make the choice. You have to be like, all right, either you're going to fight him or you're going to have him join your team. But like Dave said, I mean, you can do it and not have him join you or vice versa. I still think it counts. This one is basically like, yeah, this is the main character of the game. Again, when you think about how far ahead Chrono Trigger was, I mean, you can make time jokes here, but like, it's kind of remarkable all the mechanisms that game had that just were unprecedented for its time.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think it's really cool how it's a side quest that in hindsight actually makes the main quest better because it's pretty easy to figure out how to go about reviving Chrono. So you kind of have to make a choice of like, I want to see what the story is like when we don't do it. And it kind of like enriches that story, gives you a whole other take that's pretty good on its own. What do you do if your main hero dies? Kind of Game of Thrones situation here. And I think that that's neat that that's built into the game. If you want to get your Chrono back and have him lead your way to the finale, like you can. But if you want to see what do these kind of scrubs misplaced throughout time do when the hero falls and how do they band together, you have that route as well.
How interesting that something so pivotal to the story is optional. Like you said, not hard to pick up on. I mean, Gaspar's hinting at it on multiple occasions, and once you consider the possibility when you're like talking to the other party members at the end of time or doing other stuff, everybody's like, let's go get Chrono! Come on, get Chrono! We have a chance to save it, come on! So, I mean, almost everybody probably does it. But even so, the fact that you don't have to, I mean, I think it fits the category, so for me, automatically, I'm going to go to my best game of all time and put that as one of the leading candidates.
Now, so that's like, I suppose it is a side quest. I'm not going to say it doesn't count. I'm just interested, like, that's... Yeah. It's not like a traditional side quest at the very least. And my question is, when you start really thinking of traditional side quests, does Bethesda have... Are they the best in the business with side quests? And I think what's interesting in a side quest, what makes a good side quest is when it gets some extra attention in like writing and story. We'll get to this eventually, but like how many side quests are like, hey, what's up, dude? Go collect 5 whatever. The fetch quests. Like every game has them. I hate them so much. There's no story. There's barely any even fabricated reason to go do it. It just pads game length time. It feels pointless. And it feels pointless from a gamer perspective. It feels pointless on a meta perspective where you're like the hero of whatever story and you're going and like collecting whatever the fuck. So I love it when there is a side quest that adds to the world or the lore or fleshes out a character.
This
I say Bethesda doesn't. I don't think Bethesda has the best. I think Rockstar has the best because of the sometimes they are fetch quests, like you said, in Rockstar with their different quests, but sometimes the variation of stuff you have to do always, I don't know, just it makes me laugh. It's interesting. It's different. Like I like it how they can be sometimes very much the same and then very much different in Rockstar side quests.
I want to jump in, but I want to give you the chance, Chris.
that's fine. Can jump in.
I agree that the writing is good on Rockstar, but to me, a good side quest a lot of the times changes. There's a variety in what you're doing too, and so with so many side quests, it's like go to this place, kill this thing, come back, or go to this place, collect this thing. And in Rockstar's no different. They have some good writing, but how many times am I going to go to a thing? I know I've talked about this before. It's seemingly innocuous. Something goes wrong in this drug deal, because of course it does. You have a shootout, you escape. That's like the formula for 95% of the missions in those games. And it's always great when they get away from it, when they do a heist or when they do something unique. And you would think that they would learn, but like the very next mission, they go back to the tried and true. And that's why I like, the reason I say Bethesda is you get such a variety of what you're asked to do. You'll like attend this party where you have to talk to people and maybe steal a thing, and there's no fighting at all. Or you have to, in the example that I have from Skyrim, you get married to someone, take them to an altar, and then you have to kill them on the altar to appease a Daedric prince to get their weapon. Like, that's so unique. And it's a variety in storytelling, but it's also a variety in like what you're being asked to do.
So, I'm thinking of Fallout 4 and Fallout games in general with some of the side quests. Sometimes the side quests go so far away from the main quest, you almost forget that you're doing the main quest. I think that was a big problem in Fallout 4, which is a big problem of mine. With at least sometimes the side quests, even if they may be repetitive, they're sometimes short enough and easy enough, I guess is the right word, to not distract too much from the main part of the game.
The tricky thing to me is that I would put Bethesda as my number one as well, but it's not because of Fallout 4. It's probably my biggest disappointment with Fallout 4 is I thought the main story was still pretty lackluster, which was probably true in both 3 and New Vegas. New Vegas probably the strongest of the 3. But then also the side quests felt like they took a step back, and that was the thing that really powered me through both 3 and New Vegas, was I loved those almost to the detriment of the main story. Skyrim too. I would rather go around picking up things, like finding things at random, coming across strangers and seeing what they were up to, than actually engage with the main quest. To me, that was the main quest. I don't know if that speaks to how good they were, how poor the main story was, some combination therein. At the very least, I never felt like those tasks were rudimentary overall. There certainly are occasionally in those 3 games that I mentioned things where it's just like, go out, do a thing, come back. I think that's an inevitable part of video games to some extent. But those 3, I think, are the pinnacle of, you are encouraging me to go around and explore and engage with this world because there's lots of interesting things to do. Didn't have that with 4.
Yeah, I didn't either, and that was especially hard because for the suspension of disbelief to work, like, your son is out there, but you really want to do this like quirky radio side quest. Like, the side quest has to be really good to fuel that suspension of disbelief of why the fuck would this person not actually be doing the main quest. Yeah. And in 3, I thought they achieved that. In 4, I didn't really think they did. But it's funny that you brought up 3 because I have... So the actual side quest is the simulation one. Dave, you both played 3. When you go into that like black and white sitcom simulation and it's really weird and funny and spot on, which makes it so interesting when it starts going super south and people start getting murdered.
Yeah.
And it's because they captured it so well and to the point where then when they turn, you really feel it. Mm-hmm. I remember just that whole side quest being like, this is as engaging and interesting as anything that a lot, not just that game, a lot of games' main quests. That was so interesting to me.
I don't know if it was just the way it hit me at the time, but I have more fond memories of Fallout 3 than I do anything else. That's why it's tough, because I do think New Vegas is the better game, but 3 just hit me at the right time, and that's always going to influence my rankings. There are certain things that have happened at the right time that have made me love them more. But I'm with you. That's one that sticks out to me. For Skyrim, while we're on the topic of the three of those, the Dark Brotherhood side quest is one that stands out to me quite a bit. The fact that you really could go either way on it and have something interesting to it, either side of it, to me that's kind of neat as well, because then you could talk to people about playing the game and be like, oh, I did this with them, and they could go, oh yeah, I did this other thing. And you have that back and forth, like, oh, that's cool, I didn't know it would do that. Those are the kind of scenarios. It's nice to have an interesting side quest. It's also nice when they can branch and actually have an impact on the world around you and still be effective.
I think that's what Mass Effect 2 did the best with their side quests.
Excellent side quest. Yes.
And that's where you can beat the game without it. You can have, a successful ending, I guess is how you could say it, without going through all the side quests. But if you want to feel the best for the characters that you've grown accustomed to, that you've cared about, you want to do their side quests, and you want to have the best ending possible because you spent that extra time with those characters. So I think that's why that one has one of the better arguments for some of the best side quests.
Well, you have to have a reward, right? And if the reward in The Witcher 3 and Mass Effect 2 is more just quality writing, more time with these characters, and a lot of thought being given. They did an interview with CD Projekt Red, who did Witcher 3, and their mentality is they approach every side quest like they do the main quest. They say, what can we do to make this interesting? We don't want it to be fluff. We don't want it to just pad the game time. We want there to be a reason for it. And if there is no reason, we want to take it out. If it's not funny or interesting or engaging, it's done. And I think that's like that attention to detail is huge. Mm-hmm. But I also love to go back to Fallout 3. I love that side quest with the simulation. I also love randomly sneaking through someone's house and looking into their fridge to steal, like, whatever. And there's like human body parts in the fridge. And I stumbled upon a house of cannibals. Turns out it's a like little block city, whatever, full of cannibals. And as much as I love the set piece side quest, there's something to be said for kind of like discovering through gameplay, sort of like side little stories on your own.
Like extra bits that you never would have come across if you didn't explore it on your own. I think that's what side quests can do really well. That for sure, but almost like I created like a new headcanon. Like there was no guarantee that I was going to come into this basement and do this thing. In the story that I just created by wandering the world, I created a situation where I stumbled as a thief upon something most would argue is much worse than thievery. And then they immediately discovered me, and I had to shoot my way out of the city, and it wasn't a scripted moment. Maybe that's what I'm trying to say. It was just something I stumbled upon, but that sticks with me all these years later. Yeah. Oh, it's just interesting sometimes. I know when I'm playing through a game that I've never played through or haven't really studied outside of just my experience with the game, sometimes I don't even know if I should have run into these things. Mm-hmm. And so then when I talk to people afterward, they're like, oh yeah, I didn't see that at all. I'm like, whoa, I had a completely unique experience, which is kind of cool when that happens.
Well, I love XCOM. I had my best character got injured. So she was in the base. She was hurt. She kind of got injured for being a little too ballsy in a mission. So there's all this like kind of unique story stuff. And then at that moment, that's when the aliens decided to attack the base. So it's a bunch of rookies and my like veteran person, but who's hurt, who happens to be in the base to defend it. And again, it was one of those, it wasn't scripted at all. It's just how it happened. But it creates this like narrative that really kind of impacts you and stays with you. And I think that's what I love about games in general is the ability to kind of come across that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So is the simulator one your favorite, your best side quest of all time?
Yeah, probably. Well, no, there's a lot. I'm just giving you a couple of all of the Daedric quests. There's like 13 Daedric princes, Chris, I think, or something along those lines.
Yeah, a good chunk.
And they're all kind of like evil and chaotic. And they all have like a unique thing that you have to do to get their weapon. That's in Skyrim, Dave. You'll play that at some point. Again, though, with like sometimes the writing itself is the reward for a quest. There's a quest in Witcher 3. It's called No Place Like Home. The whole quest is you're just getting drunk with your friends. That's it. And I like a few nights before a big battle is going to take place, it's just you and people you've spent a lot of the game with just getting drunk and being stupid and having conversations and doing like a faux investigation, but on like, where did this person go because they're drunk? Where did they stumble off to? And it's just great. It's just endearing to the characters. It doesn't have to be there. There's no real reason for it, and it's excellent.
Dave's just nodding. I like that he's on board with it.
Yeah.
Fortunately, this is when I don't play those games. I can't add anything to them.
See, Dave, I'm gonna throw into the hat Witcher 3 for you to play.
Without 2 or 1, huh?
Yeah, honestly. Yeah. You could play 2. I'm not against it, but just jumping to 3 is fine.
So where do we stand on Breath of the Wild here? Because you can argue that damn near anything in Breath of the Wild is a side quest.
Outside from the plateau and beating Ganon.
Pretty much. And the main quest, as we talked about in our review a few weeks ago, kind of lackluster, all things considered. But this is where you kind of have to define side quests to a certain degree, because it's like, do activities count if there's not a lot of story per se?
I kind of say, like, no, in a way. When I think of side quests, personally, not to take anything away from Breath of the Wild, but like, to me, it's not a lot of side quests. It's just like, there are things that you can do on the side, but it's not like a side quest.
So, I mean, Breath of the Wild has retrieving cuckoos to put back in a pen. They have go find this weapon and show it to this guy.
Oh, they actually do, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
They have, they have go talk to this lady and give him a flower from this other guy. Like, they have a lot of different things. They have a whole category of side quests that they even market in the game.
They're actually not that good. The
No,
side
those aren't.
quests are not that good. It's the side kind of exploring and stuff that are much better.
No, the ones that are better are the shrine quests for
Yep.
the most part. Those are more fun because you kind of have, when you go through a side quest and you like hand, somebody this book that you found, and they're like, oh, cool, here's your reward, 20 rupees. It's like, I have 7,000 rupees. I don't really care.
Yeah.
Then there's a shrine quest. And you're like, okay, now I've got this shrine. That's kind of awesome. Like, it's more of a reward at the end.
To me, the people who really loved those were people who had not played open world games before because they were Zelda fans, and this was new to them. Like, this was their introduction to the genre, because that formula for side quests is about 10 years old.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not executed particularly well in Breath of the Wild. We've kind of gone in on this before. I don't want to hang on the game too much because it is still really good. But I look at that and I'm like, yeah, this is the type of side quest that would have been acceptable around 2010. 2008, you'd be like, oh, cool, they put in these things where you can like do this favor and come back and there's a little story, you get a little reward. And now it's like, I'm expecting more than that.
Yeah.
And for the game of the year / decade to have such a glaring weakness like that, to me, is part of the problem with it. And we touched on that in the review.
That's what it does well. It does very well.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it has flaws with the side quests in particular. But to go back to this like theme, kind of the reward for me for the shrine quest, yeah, you got like a piece of whatever that could go to your stamina, your health. But the real reward, the reason what drove me to do all 120 of those or whatever it was it was like game content. I wanted to experience each puzzle because they were so unique and they're so much fun. I didn't want to put the game down until I had solved all the puzzles. Less about like, I got to get my stamina up to like whatever. I didn't really care at that point, but I wanted to make sure I saw all the game had to offer.
I have 6 left, just so you know.
You're in there.
6 shrines left to get all 120. When I'm curious, what's the worst type of side quest? I don't say the worst side quest ever, because there's a lot of bad ones out there. What's the worst side quest there is?
Specific examples of this are going to be tough for me, because if we're going to follow Shaun's definition, it's going to exclude a lot of the things I thought of. But in general, anything that has a repetitive or meaningless task with little to no payoff, especially if it's a side quest that's still somewhat mandatory. I know that sort of has intrinsic problems with the definition, but like there are some times where you're encouraged to do, say, like 2 out of 5 of these things to progress or whatever it might be. The first example I think of is Final Fantasy X, a game that I love, and I know you love, Dave. We both like it more than Shaun does, But I think both Blitzball and the Ultimate Weapons, while not necessarily side quests by Shaun's definition, are two of the first ones that come to mind for me because I'm like, I hate this. I don't enjoy doing it. It's tedious. I don't like the fact that I feel like I might have to get certain things.
Yep.
So it's like the inverse of what Shaun just said with the shrines. The shrines in Breath of the Wild are self-actualizing because you want to do more of them. They're fun. They're great. You want to unlock them.
Yeah.
Great. Outstanding. No problem. This is the opposite where you resent it. You don't want to do more of them, but you feel like you have to.
Well,
Yeah.
the thing, I mean, in Zelda, when you're doing the shrines, it's still the same game. You're playing the same thing. You're staying under the same theme of everything. When you play Blitzball or try to dodge 200 lightning bolts or somehow try to race a chocobo through a field in less than 0 seconds, it's really frustrating because it's not the same game anymore. You've changed what you're doing completely.
Well, and so often it's not like throw in to your list, Dave, mandatory stealth quests in a non-stealth game.
Yep.
Yeah.
Which 90% of the time they don't get stealth. Every once in a while it's fun, but too often it's overly punishing. They don't have a good mechanic for it. It feels it doesn't work. It doesn't work. And I would kind of add to what Chris was saying, like when it's tedious, when it takes forever. I'm playing Final Fantasy 14 right now. There's a lot of side quests where it's like go out and kill 5 things. It takes like 2 minutes to kill those 5 things. It's fine. If it was go out and kill those 5 things and it takes you like an hour to find them down, they're hard to kill, that would be a huge issue. Maybe even like a barrier for me. But the interesting thing is Witcher has at least one quest where you're at a bank and it's like you got to go to a line and you got to wait in the line, and then the person tells you to, oh, you're in the wrong line. You got to go to the line B. So you go to line B and then you wait there, and then they close right before you get, so you have to sit in the lobby. And like the whole point is they're like riffing on what a bad like side quest is, but because they're so self-aware and smart about it, it's genius. It's one of the best side quests in the game, even though the actions have every staple of a bad side quest. So like you can have a bad side quest with good writing, but like you can't have bad writing, tedium. It's not fun, and I feel like so many times games have exactly that.
Or for me, the ones that are just hard to find the start of, or after you find the easy start, not finding the next step. I mean, certain things like finding all the Korok seeds in Zelda is just like, okay, this is stupid. Like, it's just a crapshoot if I'm going to find all of them. You really have to be focused, like, take notes on them if you're going to find all of them. Or just certain quests where it's like Shaun, you said, go kill these 5 things. Well, if there's one thing right in front of you, go kill it. But then the second thing is on the other side of the map, and there's no indicator of where you need to go. You just have to stumble across it. Those drive me bonkers. I can't stand those.
Well, how about like Mass Effect? As great as Mass Effect 2 is, and it might be, Dave, I'm with you on one of the very best examples of side quests. Each side quest feels like a mini movie that you do for your character. And they do a bunch of different genres too, like the one where like everyone's gone space crazy. And then there's one with Miranda's, is that her name?
Yeah, Miranda's dad.
Her backstory. There's one with Legion where you go into like the digital whatever. Like, it's great. Mass Effect 1, drive on this planet that looks like exactly like every other planet and find like 9 like little things. That might be the word. There is no story. There's no payoff. It's not fun. It's tedious. It takes forever. Like, it's like we just hit every criteria for a bad side quest. That might be the worst example I can think of.
But there's the one you go to the moon, and there's the AI that took over the moon, Shaun.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's not driving around
Yeah.
finding pendants.
Unfortunately, there's one of those quests, and like 25 times you're going on the surface of a planet.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
it's
and drive that Mako, or I think whatever it's called. I think that's what it was called. I can't remember.
Mm-hmm.
It's been 15 years since I played that game now.
I mean, I can't talk because I didn't finish one, but I'll tell you, that was certainly part of why I didn't.
I can't tell you how many times I'm just driving in a straight line and I'm like doing fun stuff with the camera because the driving's so boring. I'm like putting the camera like under the car and like spinning it around really fast, and it doesn't matter because I don't need to look where I'm going. I just hit go straight forever. It's the worst. It's the worst. And like you kind of see, I like Mass Effect 1, but you look at Andromeda, you're like, So they return to their roots with this one.
Mm-hmm.
They're terrible.
Except with no good writing or characterization to buoy it.
Interesting though that like they rallied so well in 2 and 3. 3 also has its share of good side quests. I want to kind of argue that the post-game DLC, because it's kind of like a love letter to the fans for the franchise, is way up on my list. I don't know if that counts as a side quest either. It's kind of an epilogue. Again, we're in kind of murky territory here, but I think it fits the criteria well enough, and that was one where I was like, obviously they had a lot of goodwill to restore after the ending debacle that we talked about on this very show, but I think they did it in a really well done way because it was, like you said, it was more time with characters that you had already grown to enjoy, and then some unique interactions with each one of them along the way. So that, after the debacle that was a lot of the stuff in 1, you can see just how far they've come over the franchise. And let me toss out one other one that comes to mind for me, weirdly enough. There's a lot of goofy shit in the Saints Row series. Sometimes too goofy, especially the later the series goes, the goofier it gets. But I'll tell you what, most of it's fun. At least it doesn't match all those bad benchmarks we mentioned, because maybe it's a little silly sometimes, but you're enjoying it. It is kind of like smart and ripping on certain genres or tropes or whatever it might be. And I'll be honest, I don't think it counts as a side quest because it's just an activity per se, but insurance fraud is one of my favorite things in any video game ever.
I was preparing to ask you why insurance fraud was better than the entire game of Saints Row 2.
It's just, I don't know if it's just ragdoll physics. And then it just gets better when you have superpowers because now you're getting ragdolled across the island. You get hit by a car and you go flying like 4 miles and you're like, okay.
Dave, insurance fraud, you've never played Saints Row 2. Insurance fraud is you're just getting pummeled. You like throw yourself in traffic and it starts a meter and you start getting like smashed around. And the longer it goes, the more like, I don't know what
Momentum.
the word is. Yeah, you'll get hit by a truck and you'll be like sent like to like 8 stories high and you're just racking up dollars as you do it. It's brilliant.
Wow.
It's not realistic, but it's brilliant.
It's silly. And again, the physics are dumb even before they broke everything with superpowers in 4. But even back in the original version of it was just kind of fun just because you'd be like walking down the street and all of a sudden you'd fling yourself into the road in front of a car. And then you can get knocked into another car in a chain reaction. And I don't know. It's a dumb little activity, but it sticks out to me as something that was a lot of fun. And I'm like, look, this is silly. It doesn't make any sense, but it fits this world because everything's silly and doesn't make sense. And more importantly, it's fun. When I think back to when I picked Super Mario Odyssey as my game of the year for 2017, a decision I will regret to my grave, the one takeaway I still have was I was having fun the whole time. And I think sometimes in the quest for like filling out these robust, long RPGs in particular with all this different content, developers kind of lose sight of what's actually fun. And their quest to include this something of everything, they end up with things like the driving around the planets in Mass Effect 1, where it was like, all right, well, it's a space game. We need to definitely have them explore planets. And I was like, okay, but it's not fun. Well, we got to do it. We got to explore space. And you're like, but players aren't going to like it. So you can do a lot worse than what Saints Row does, because at least when I think back on those, I'm like, yeah, I really enjoyed that. And I think back on like half the side quests in Fallout 4, and I'm like, they left no impression on me.
Yeah, well, I think when you get down to just like what's fun at the end of the day, and I was listening to a podcast that went into this, but like they were bringing up Breath of the Wild. They got brought up like weapon degradation, and really they brought up any game where there's weapon degradation. Has it ever been fun in any game? Even like Fallout is another example. Is your weapon degrading over use ever like, wow, I love this mechanic, it's so cool? Like, no. And they brought up Earthbound. The way I've never played it, but Chris, I think you have. The way the economy works is like you get money, but you have to put it in a ATM, so when you die you don't lose it. But then to buy anything, you have to go withdraw it from the ATM, and it's like a nightmare. And the reviewers brought up like, yeah, it does. You're a kid, so like it makes sense, but it doesn't mean it's fun. And that's like, again, like you said, I think the developers kind of lose sight sometimes in their vision as like, okay, but what is a side quest that we can do that the players are really just going to enjoy?
We talked a lot about Red Dead 2 recently, just last week as it were. That's a fine example of splitting the difference.
Yeah.
I don't love the dominoes. It's fun. It's a fine activity to do a couple of times. I talked about my issues with poker, but I don't have any qualms with it being there. But those are minimal. Those aren't really featured as like this core thing. They're just a side activity. There's not really a story involved, and there's some fun back and forth with the characters involved there. That's okay. It's not great, but I look at that and I go, that was fine to kind of flesh out the world and put more things in it. And then I think about other things, like you mentioned, meters, weapons degrading. I understand to a certain extent that they have to add to the core gameplay experience, especially if it's meant to include a challenge. But like you said, when your takeaway from it is like, boy, I hate that, why would you want players saying that about any part of your game?
Yeah, exactly.
Why do you want to engender hatred towards your game? And then they say, well, that's not our intent. Our intent is to do this. It's like, okay, but if the byproduct is still that same hatred, then you've effectively done that because you created this.
Yeah, well, again, Red Dead 2 is another good example, though, of the... It was fine. By the point in the game where I'm reaching near the end, I'm kind of over the gunplay. It wasn't particularly deep. It wasn't particularly fun, but I loved some of the side quests that especially involved his like redemption. You didn't even have to do these quests, but they're so satisfying, and I was there for the story. Even when the gameplay had kind of stopped gaining my interest, the story got me through. Maybe that's what it comes down to. Maybe I am just a sucker for good story and side quests, and that's kind of like all I need.
That's exactly what I am. And when it's a good story, it continues on a good story. Like there were like in Red Dead 2 when I was playing that, there were certain times where they'd have the indicators of the missions, and there'd be one for Dutch, and I'm like, well, I got to save that one for last because clearly that's going to move the story forward. I've got to make sure to do every single other one first because those are the side quests, and I want to make sure I do those before I move the story forward on the Dutch mission.
Yeah.
So I mean, and not to mention the thing I like most about that game and for side quests is just riding your horse down the way and then finding somebody. You do something for him for 2 minutes, whether it's to kill a wolf to save him from being hunted, or give him medicine, or give him a ride back into town or something. Those are quick and fun and immerse you into the game, which I love those side quests because they're short, but they have a point.
And I'm sorry, I shot you down with Rockstar. I was totally just thinking of Grand Theft Auto. Red Dead is a great example of good side quests.
That.
Yeah,
I'll throw one more in the mix. I actually really like the serial killer one, where you're just kind of riding around and all of a sudden you see like limbs, and then if you go investigate it, there's this body that's strung up and a note and like clues to figure out. That kind of stuff is neat too. It kind of splits the difference between a true like dedicated side quest you pick up from like a person and the ones that Dave mentioned where you just kind of rode around and found them incidentally. I kind of like the fact that, like your cannibalism one in Fallout 3, it was something that existed. You didn't have to come across, but if you did, you could choose to engage, and if you did, there was a lot to it where it was like, okay, cool.
I never got that one. That sounds awesome. But you reminded me, Knights of the Old Republic had so many good side quests. One of them is like there's like a murder mystery. Yeah, or maybe it's not murder mystery, but you have to figure out which group is guilty. And I don't think there's even any fighting in the side quest. You're just talking to different people, trying to point out, oh my God, what's the word? It's Phoenix Wright.
Evidence?
No, a contradiction. You're trying to point out the contradictions, and it's great. It's one of the best examples. And like that's the stuff that I love is like, give me something new. The main quest is I'm getting all I can out of your combat system or whatever. Give me something kind of fresh and fun in a side quest.
Yeah. Don't make the side quest go kill this group of people because they're giving me trouble, which has happened in every side quest of every game ever.
Unless you're going to make it a really good story. Yeah. Unless there's something really captivating. Deus Ex is a wonderful example. You get some really interesting, like novel-worthy side quests, and I'm shocked at the level that goes into the side quests when you never even have to do it. They're amazing, and they're so deep.
I'm actually glad you brought that up because that's one I had forgotten. But you're right. Deus Ex is way up there for me.
And what sucks about Deus Ex is a lot of the side quests are really... You want to play with a guide because a lot of them are really easy to miss. And that's another one where I don't care about like the praxis points or whatever I get from the side quests. I care about like that's such wonderful content. I don't want to miss it.
Yeah. I'm actually surprised. That means neither of you guys found the serial killer thing.
No. That sounds amazing.
Yeah. But what an example then, right? Like I happened to stumble upon it, and that's part of my core memories of the game. It's not the first thing. I mean, a lot of like what happened with Arthur obviously is the main takeaway, but that's up there on my list of things I'll remember from that game.
Well, yeah, and
but it was optional, and to the point, you guys didn't happen to stumble across it. I'm sure there are side quests you guys did that I didn't get.
See,
which is cool.
That sucks, though. I mean, that sucks. I love that it's there, but like, in my Western, sometimes goofy stuff is fine. In my Western game, I don't want like, oh, hey, can you help me get my dinosaur museum going? Or help me with this robot? Like, no, I don't care. That's goofy. That's silly. And I don't really want it. Maybe, I'm sure there's people that do. Serial killer as Arthur Morgan, finding him and taking him. That sounds great. Who was it? How did it conclude?
I'll tell you when you're older.
Oh, shit.
Or maybe you can boot up the game and go find it. I think it's in a set location, so I think if you want to go back and do it, it wouldn't be too hard to do. And it doesn't take super long. I think there's only 3 or 4 spots, if I remember right.
So as we wrap this up, is there a game that you want to nominate as best side quest ever, just from top to bottom?
I mean, if I had to do it, it's probably Mass Effect 2. But I really did like Red Dead 2's and Grand Theft Auto 5 side quests. So, because even though they get repetitive, they're fun to me.
Yeah.
I would say Skyrim, and I'd be kind of sad about it, but I know the 2 times I've played through that in its entirety, that it's constantly those, whether it's an entire series of them or just a one-off, that I have the most fun with. And Fallout 3 is close. I think Fallout 3 does a better job with its particular setting, but I also kind of just love the apocalyptic, wasteland type setting that it has in general. But I think it's Skyrim. There's just so much different stuff to do, and most of it really does do a good job of making you feel powerful and giving you good stuff, cool places to explore, and some good story in most cases. So it's Skyrim, but there's quite a few I would consider. I think Mass Effect 2 and 3 are way up there for me. I think Deus Ex is really up there for me, which is sad that I'd forgotten
really
it.
Good, yeah.
But I think it's Skyrim.
Do the endings like B and C count for Nier as side quests? Not really, right?
I don't think so. They're kind of their own full-fledged part of the story. If they did,
good.
they would be up there.
Oh my god. Not the best, but so extremely good. I'm with you guys. I'm sure there are other games I'm not thinking of, but the Mass Effect 2, the Red Dead, those all stand out to me a lot. The
and Witcher
Bethesda
3.
games. It that's the best one.
Yeah.
It's just so a lot of games they'll like Final Fantasy 12 did this too, where there's like little side quests and then there's like hunts and there's whatever. A lot of games have these like, so you have like side quests, you have side activities, you have hunts, you have whatever. Witcher 3 is the only game I've played where I've been super invested in all of it. I didn't think I was gonna be, but I did all the hunts because they're all unique and they're all the lore for each creature that you hunt is super interesting. The side quests are excellent. You get so much out of it, both in-game rewards, good story, more Geralt being dry and hilarious. It's just top to bottom. It's great. The side quests are as good as the main quest, but in The Witcher 3's case, that's actually a compliment, unlike Skyrim.
Or Fallout 4.
And Fallout 3 and Fallout 4, where like this. But Skyrim's a really good one, Chris, because I almost forget how much of that game is actually side quests. When I think back to being an assassin, being in the Thieves Guild, that's all side quests.
The Vampire
stuff.
DLC, I think, is way up there. All side quests. That's the problem. Is like I think the best side quests are not in Skyrim, but when I think about them in their totality and the sheer number of them and how many of them I enjoyed, I'm like, because it's like a ton of B pluses to me, it's what makes it the best, as opposed to some of the really like A plus stuff other games have had.
Yeah. Yeah, I do. Actually, you just reminded me. I homework. The best DLC in a game, I think, is going to be really interesting because there's been
DLC,
some good ones. Yeah, horse armor. Isn't that always funny?
Horse armor.
It's like now, like 15 years later, it's still like the example of bad DLC. But yeah, we should look at that. I think that's really interesting. And there's some duds.
Oh boy.
Much more common to have duds in DLC than successes, so that'll be fun.
Almost like they're not dedicating their full suite of resources to it.
Yeah.
Might grab.
Anything else? Everybody good?
No, I think we're good. I think this was a success.
Yeah, I have one last one. One last side quest I just want to get your opinion on in Grand Theft Auto 5.
Okay.
We're doing the paparazzi, the photos. You're really taking photos of all the different celebrities around town. I think that gives that game such a good feel because you're in Los Angeles type of thing. I don't know. That one's not a go shoot 'em up type of thing. It's a go take your pictures and go get out of there type of thing. I don't know. For some reason, the character that leads you to it is ridiculous, but I think he's fun. So just one last side quest that I liked. I don't know if you guys remember it well.
I remember it.
I didn't. I don't remember it, but seems interesting. It's something different than the normal thing, and if there's some good writing and good story moments, then that's the kind of stuff that I like.
Yep.
That's a fair addition. At least it gives you a little more cred for your Grand Theft Auto 5 pick.
Still fun. Still,
hey, the heart wants what the heart wants.
it does.
And by the way, we still have to have this discussion whether off air or on. We'll decide. We'll see how much longer we can put it off. But I actually think Phoenix Wright is high up on my list of games that Dave should play.
I've played the first one.
Okay.
Well, so what did you think of the first one?
It was fun. It was absolutely fun. I loved I love the story. I love the just the catching people in their contradictions and the pointing out things. I think it was just fun to kind of have that aha moment in that game.
Because like you should probably skip to like 3, like skip 2, just play 3. I think that's fine.
I wonder if you could find, if you were to emulate it, if you could like find a save state at certain cases. I bet you could. Because I think there's a couple cases in 2 you should do, but I
last
agree.
case is good in 2.
Especially the last one,
Yeah.
yes. But I would agree that it's not all necessary. But then everything after that I think is really good. I mean, again, does each game, like does 5 have a couple cases that are, sure, but that's because primarily the best cases in Phoenix Wright are the ones that involve like all the main characters doing important stuff. And you can't do that for every case or it loses its specialness.
I have a proposal. This is our show.
Yes.
Why don't we do next episode? We just dedicate to, we will convince Dave of the next game that he's going to play.
I've already convinced it.
What?
The other thought I had too was that it's something that we could record. We could give Dave the controls, do this kind of setup we have in reverse, and we could just talk shit the whole time. Not about Dave, mostly about this year. A little bit about Dave, but that
For
would be true
Phoenix
if whoever
Wright?
has the control. Yeah, it'd be a really easy one to do over this connection
It's true.
with emulators and stuff. Because I own all of them, so I don't have any shame in picking up ROMs for that. Because I own the games legally. It's just the DS and especially the 3DS
Yeah.
are a real son of a bitch to hook up to a computer.
I own them like 3 times over even, so I definitely don't feel bad.
Like capture card software for the 3DS is like $200. I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that. So anyways, we'll keep talking about it. There's some ideas. We have plenty of NBA left in the tank. We're going to do another recording of it after this. I do think FIFA would be fun to do for the channel. That's an easy one without much
Yes.
investment. But I thought Phoenix Wright could actually be kind of cool because I've been wanting to go through those again. It's been a few years for me now. And I thought, well, it's even better when you do that when somebody's doing a blind playthrough because we can help Dave if he gets stuck or if like the evidence is kind of confusing, and he gets to experience it for the first time with his reactions for people to see.
Perfect.
So, anyways, we mentioned Phoenix Wright, and it made me think of that. Also, one other note: Final Fantasy VI came out on October 11th in North America, so we could look at doing that as the look back as 26 years ago. So, unfortunately, missed 25.
I love it. Let's do that. And then next week, we're convincing Dave for the next game. And I think I know what you mean, Dave, about you know what your next one is, but we'll say after that one. Because your next one is kind of like playing the same game twice. So
Yeah.
we'll do this. And actually, it's good. You don't have to wait for us now. So we'll talk about it next week.
That's true.
We'll help you make a decision.
All right.
You can ask us any questions.
Mm-hmm.
Ask us what's important to Dave, and we'll answer.
Because, I mean, so far we haven't led you astray. And I also think that both of us take recommendations very seriously, probably more than we should. But like my word means a lot to me when I tell somebody they're going to like something. So I say Phoenix right now, and if you like the first one, every game after that except the second one is better, in my opinion. And the first one's not bad. It's just as you get more into the series and you see more and more familiar characters, it just builds on itself. So, alrighty, that's the end of this episode. We'll see what adventures await Dave next time. Please enjoy your side quests and skip the shitty ones. In between episodes, you can find us at our website, objectionnetwork.com, or at youtube.com/objectionnetwork for new content 7 days a week. Maybe even a Phoenix Wright playthrough. We'll see you next time.